Pattern making is one of the most popular sewing techniques that we sewists use to create the wonderful pieces that we love to make. However, its management and organization is usually overlooked, and there are so many practices that we do not take into consideration after drafting our pattern. So, in this video, I'm going to be showing you and telling you about the best practices that you should be doing after you draft your pattern and not just putting it inside a box and calling it a day. So, if that sounds like something that you're interested in, then make sure you keep on watching. Hello fellow creators, welcome back to Sidike, the YouTube channel. My name is Shewa, and on this channel I post fun and informative videos on sewing. In today's video is the part 2 of me organizing my patterns. So in my previous video I showed you how I organize my patterns from it looking like a complete mess to being totally organized in folders and all of that. And in today's video I'm going to be taking you through the process that you should be following from when you finish drafting your pattern to when it's time for you to put it into your pattern stash. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, then make sure you keep on watching. Now you're done with your pattern. You've already drafted the neckline, you drafted the armhole, you drafted the side seams and all of that. And yeah, that is it. As long as you have the silhouette, that's all it takes, right? Nope, that's not all it takes. So the first step that you need to be doing after you have drafted the body of your pattern is you should always ensure that you add your seam allowance and your hemming allowance. Okay, and this is really important because patterns are not just paper. Okay, we're going to be putting it on our fabric in order for it to be cut out into pieces that we would wear. And when these pieces are cut out, you have to join them together, and that is where the seam allowance comes into play. We need a certain amount of inches for us to be able to make the seams that will join all these pieces together. So you should always ensure that before you cut out your pattern, you should always add your seam allowance. And the standard inches for seam allowance is usually 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. So I personally like to use 1/2 inch, and then the hemming allowance is usually overlooked as well. So the hem of the top is usually the bottom of the top, and most fabrics that we have fray. So in order for you to ensure that bottom part of your top doesn't fray, your skirt doesn't fray, your trouser doesn't fray, you have to hem it. But most people usually forget to add the hemming allowance at the bottom of their pattern. For hemming allowance, I usually like to leave 1 inch of hemming allowance because I noticed that when hems are bigger, they usually look better. But it depends on the type of project that you're working on. But I just like to leave 1 inch of hemming allowance, just know that I have that. And if it's too long, I just need to cut it off. But if it's too short and I did not leave the hemming allowance at all, it will be a problem. So there are so many ways that you can actually add your seam allowance or your hemming allowance. You can actually manually use your tape rule to add those inches, and I find that that is actually better if you want to make straight lines, like maybe the side seams or like the hem, that like you can just use that. But if you want to add seam allowance to curves, like maybe your neckline or your armhole, you should opt for this cute hack. So what this hack does is that you stack 2 pencils together or 2 markers together, whichever marking device you're working with, and then what you're just going to do is that you're just going to just trace out the curve that you've already made there. And you would notice that as you're tracing it out, the second marker that you've placed together is actually creating another curve. So that is just a great hack for curves and all of that. So those are the 2 ways that I usually add seam allowance and hemming allowance to my pattern. So the next thing is your grain line. So I have talked about a grain line. I have 2 very detailed videos on this, so just going to get out. It's going to be linked up here, and it's going to be linked in my bio, in my description box as well. So what grain line basically means is that it's just like a guide for you to ensure that while you are cutting out your pattern on your fabric, you're cutting it out on the right lines of the fabric. I'm not going to go too deep into this because you can just go and check out the video. It has literally everything, like everything you need to know about grain line. You can find it in that video, so just go and check it out in my description box. I'll wait to the end of this video because we still have 2 more practices that you need to know. Okay, so the third one, which is really important. All of them are important, but this is the organization part of it. Okay, so what this is labeling your patterns. You want to ensure that all your patterns are labeled properly. Okay, you might ask, what are these labels that are so important? Well, they are the name, panel, size, cutting instructions, and the date. So I'm going to be going through them one by one so that you get a full understanding of what they are. So for the name of the pattern, that could be like, what is the name? Okay, so we have different names for different types of clothing. So if you drafted a pattern for this type of clothing, let's say for instance you drafted a pattern for an asymmetric cow neck, you drafted a pattern for a corset top, that is the name of the pattern. You also want to put the panel. So is it the back panel or the front panel? So this is important, of course, so that you know that, okay, this is the front panel and this is the back panel. That is quite self-explanatory. And then the size. So whose size is it? Is it your size? Is it someone else's size? So this one is particularly more important if you're sewing for different people, or if you work with size 6, size 8, size 10. That is just a good way of tracking the size of the patterns that you're making. But if you're making for yourself, you can just put my size, which is what I do. Okay, and then the next thing is the cutting instructions. So the cutting instructions are basically just like putting cut on fold, or cut 2 pieces, cut 1 piece, cut 3 pieces. This is really, really important because there is nothing as sad as cutting out your fabric and realizing that, oh, I was meant to cut this on a fold, or oh, I was meant to cut 2 pieces rather than 3 pieces. Do you understand? And these are all the things that you would have probably thought about when you were actually drafting your pattern, or when you were watching the tutorial that you used to create that pattern. But just because you did not put it after drafting your pattern, you probably forgot. And then the last but not least is the date. So the date is really important as well, because you want to know when you created this pattern. Okay, it's also a good way to track your progress as well, because trust me, there's so many patterns that we have that are dated now, that are not our size anymore, or that, you know, it's just not giving what it's supposed to give. So that is just a way of tracking the patterns that you've made over the years. And that is just that for the labeling. And the last but not the least is tracing out new patterns. So with pattern making, we usually make our basic bodice, our basic skirt, our basic trouser, our basic sleeve, and you should ensure that whichever pattern that you are making again, that maybe you want to use that basic bodice to create another pattern, don't use that one that you've already created. Don't use that one that you've already, you know, put all your labels or your everything there. No, what you want to do is that you want to trace out that basic bodice pattern on another pattern. So in order for you to trace out your patterns, there are different ways that you can do that, but I'm going to tell you about 3 different ways that you can do that. So the first way that you can do that is that you can use see-through paper, which is kind of like, you know, all this like tracing paper. I've actually wanted to like invest in that, but it's quite more expensive than the brown paper, so I'm just chilling with my brown paper for now. Okay, I'm chilling with my brown paper for now. But you can also get that, because once you just place it on the pattern, you're going to be able to see all the lines that you've created, and it's just a very seamless process. There's another way that you can do that as well, which is tracing wheels. Your tracing wheel is that you just, you know, place your pattern. You can put pattern weights on the fresh pattern paper, so that, you know, it doesn't like move around and all of that. And then you just use the tracing wheel to just mark the lines and the curves that are on the pattern. And once you remove that old pattern from it, you will see all those holes that you've created using the tracing wheel, and then you just want to mark over those holes with your marker, and then you have the shape and the silhouette of your initial pattern that you want to trace out. The last technique is tracing around that pattern with your marking device, which is your pencil or your marker. So for this one, you want to put your pattern weight just to secure the pattern on the fresh pattern paper, and then you're just going to trace around all the curves and all the lines on the pattern. So that depends on you and whichever way you want to go about that. So that is that for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I really do hope that you saw sense in what I was saying about these practices, because trust me, if you're not doing all these things already, you really need to do them, because once you start doing them, you're really going to see the purpose of doing them and the ease that it's going to give you while you're navigating your sewing life, and it's just going to make your sewing life much easier in 2023. I want my people to have better sewing lives, because I want a better sewing life as well. So all these things, I'm going to be taking them into play. I'm going to be, you know, practicing them, and I hope that you do too. Yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate your view. I appreciate your like, I appreciate your comments, anything that you do on my channel. I really do appreciate it. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.